Today, we're jumping into a story that's been told for thousands of years, and for good reason. It's all about what happens when doing the right thing could cost you everything. It's a story of courage under pressure, and you'll see why it still hits home today.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt that pull, that pressure to just go with the flow, maybe bend your own rules a little, just to avoid making waves? It could be at work, with your friends, anywhere, really. Well, that feeling is at the very heart of the story we're talking about.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're in the ancient, powerful kingdom of Babylon, and our main character is a man named Daniel. He's not just some guy, he's a top official in the king's court. But as he's about to find out, when you're that high up, you become a target.
Now, Daniel wasn't your typical political player. He was known for one thing above all else: his rock-solid integrity. His faith wasn't something he kept private. It was the engine driving everything he did, and everybody knew it.
Because of this, he was wise, responsible, and completely trustworthy. The king, a ruler named Darius, respected him immensely. In fact, King Darius was so impressed that he was planning to put Daniel in charge of the entire kingdom.
Well, you can probably guess that Daniel's success didn't go over well with everybody. In the halls of power, his rise to the top was sparking some serious jealousy. And in the shadows, a plan started to take shape. See, a group of other high-ranking officials decided they had to get rid of him, but they ran into a major problem. The guy was flawless. They dug for dirt, trying to find any mistake, any hint of corruption, and they came up with absolutely nothing. His integrity was like an impenetrable shield.
So, they switched gears. If they couldn't attack his work, they would have to weaponize his character. They realized the only way to get to Daniel was to go after the one thing he would never compromise: his faith.
They went to King Darius, not with threats, but with flattery. They proposed a new decree, an ego-stroking law that said for the next 30 days, nobody could pray to any god or man except for the king himself. The king, loving the idea, signed it into law, not realizing he'd just been tricked into setting a trap for his most trusted advisor.
And the penalty for breaking this new, unchangeable law? It was absolutely terrifying. You'd be thrown into a den of hungry lions.
So there it is. The trap is set. The ink on the law is dry, and Daniel is now facing a choice that will seal his fate.
When Daniel heard about the new law, he knew exactly what it was: a direct attack. He could either compromise, just stop praying for 30 days, right? Or he could stay true to who he was, knowing full well it meant facing the lions.
So what did he do? He didn't launch a campaign or start a protest. He just went home, opened his windows toward Jerusalem like he did every single day, and he prayed. It wasn't an act of public defiance. It was a quiet act of personal faithfulness.
Of course, his enemies were watching. They ran straight to the king to report him, and when King Darius heard, his heart sank. He realized he'd been completely manipulated. He spent the rest of the day trying to find a loophole, any way to save Daniel. But there was none. The law couldn't be changed.
With a heavy heart, the king had to give the order. As Daniel was being led away, the king said to him, "May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you." And with that, a huge stone was rolled over the mouth of the den, sealing Daniel inside with the lions. The king went back to his palace, but couldn't eat or sleep. It was a long, dark night. But then morning came. As the sun began to light up the sky, the moment of truth had finally arrived. At the first sign of dawn, the king rushed to the den. His voice was filled with anxiety as he called out into the darkness, hoping against hope for an answer. And then a voice came from inside the den. It was Daniel! He was alive! He called out that God had sent an angel to shut the lions' mouths. The king was overjoyed. They lifted Daniel out, and he didn't have a single scratch on him. And in a stunning twist, the men who had plotted against Daniel were thrown into the very same den. Justice was swift.
So, okay, what are we supposed to do with this ancient, incredible story? Well, it's a masterclass in what real courage looks like, and it actually has a lot to teach us about the pressures we face every day.
Look, most of us aren't going to face a literal den of lions, but we all face our own lions, don't we? It might be the fear of criticism, the risk of being unpopular, or the sting of loneliness for standing up for what we believe in. Those are the moments that truly test us.
What Daniel's story really shows us is that integrity isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. Doing what's right, especially when it's hard, builds this inner strength, a kind of resilience that no outside pressure can break.
So, the takeaway here is pretty clear. Know what you stand for and stay rooted in it. Understand that real strength is often quiet and steady, not loud and flashy. And remember that your choice to be consistent might just be the inspiration someone else needs to see.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Courage doesn't always have to roar like a lion. Sometimes, the most courageous thing in the world is the quiet, steady, day in and day out decision to be faithful to what you know is right.